Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We'll chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejas vinavaditamastu ma vitvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gently open your eyes. We'll chant from verses 56 to 60 of chapter 2. Dukkeshvanudvignamanaha,
Dukkeshvanudvignamanaha,
Sukeshu vigatasprihaha,
Sukeshu vigatasprihaha,
Vitaragabhayakrodhaha,
Vitaragabhayakrodhaha,
Stitadhirmuniruchyate,
Stitadhirmuniruchyate,
Yassarvatranabhisnehaha,
Yassarvatranabhisnehaha,
Tattat prapya shubhashubham,
Tattat prapya shubhashubham,
Nabhinandati nadveshti,
Nabhinandati nadveshti,
Tasya prajna pratisthita,
Tasya prajna pratisthita,
Yada samharate chayam,
Yada samharate chayam,
Kurmonganiva sarvashah,
Kurmonganiva sarvashah,
Indriyanindriyarthebhyah,
Indriyanindriyaर्थेभ्यः,
Tasya prajna pratisthita,
Tasya prajna pratisthita,
Vishaya vinivartante,
Vishaya vinivartante,
Niraharasya dehinah,
Niraharasya dehinah,
Rasavarjam rasopyasya,
Rasavarjam rasopyasya,
Param drishtva nivartate,
Param drishtva nivartate,
Yatato hyapi kaunteya,
Yatato hyapi kaunteya,
Purushasya vipaschitah,
Purushasya vipaschitah,
Indriyani pramathini.
Indriyani pramathini.
Haranti prasabham manaha.
Haranti prasabham manaha.
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So last week we were seeing in verse number 60 the deeper meaning of this word Indriyaha. So the whole idea of studying this is not to gain more knowledge about what these verses have to say externally, but this is a process by which we are trying to understand ourselves better. You need to remember that the difference between yogic approach and normal approaches, when you use this wisdom which you're gaining from the external source to go within yourself and actually start gaining an experiential knowledge, experiential wisdom of your own self, then that is the yogic approach. The other way is to just merely study, what does pramathin mean, turbulent, what does Indriyaha mean, and then you're qualified to write a thesis on that. Now that is of no use. You may gain so much of knowledge, information, but ultimately, how much have you succeeded in penetrating into your own self? That is what matters. So when we are doing all these verses, directly relate these points to yourself and your life. Don't be bothered about others. How can I apply these points in my life? That should be your concern. So when we are, when he's saying the senses can become pramathin, means they can, when they go out of control, they can cause a lot of problems to you. He's directly giving the message to you. Don't look at the person who's sitting next to you. Many a times I find parents who bring their children, or even sometimes this happens between spouses. One spouse brings another one, and when a point is given, they keep on looking at the other person, saying the message is for you. No. Don't worry about the other person. Each one of you take this as a direct message. All these messages, take all these things which are being given out as direct messages to you and you alone. Then only you can use this wisdom to create a complete transformation in yourself. It's very easy to gain the information. It's very easy to become well versed with the scriptures, but to go within and get the experiential knowledge of your own self is the most difficult thing. That is why a great Siddha, he said, you be the book and you be the reader. So what book should you really study? It is your own self, he said. You be the book and you be the reader. So the Bhagavad Gita, when we are taking the Bhagavad Gita, that is only to help you go within. If you merely want information, this is not the place. Actually, I am giving very less information. The focus is more on the depth, not on covering the length. So what did we see last week? The turbulent senses of even the wise person. So when we translate, we are translating the word Indriyani as senses. But as I explained to you last week, there are two aspects to the senses. One is called the Golaya or the fleshy organ. And the other is the Indriya, which is the power behind the gross organ. So when we talk of sense control or self-control, he is not referring to merely restraining your Golaya. See, people have a very superficial understanding of everything, superficial perception of life itself. So the moment anything is taught, they relate it to merely the external aspect. Spirituality is a very deep science. It is the inner science. You may apply it externally. That's a different matter. So you need to penetrate and first understand what he's trying to say. So when your senses are out of your control, they will acquire this quality of pramathin. They will start causing excessive pain to you. They will torment you. They will create tremendous stress, agitations. They will not allow you to sleep peacefully. But when the same senses come under your control, that gives you immense peace of mind. So remember, when I'm saying controlling the senses, I don't mean merely external contact, that is the quantity of contact. Some people think just because they deny themselves of sense pleasures, then they are practicing spirituality. See, externally, whether you should contact a sense object or whether you should withdraw from a sense object, all that depends upon the situation, practically what is good for you. But here I am referring to the inner control, whether you are in contact with your senses, that is whether you are participating in sense enjoyments or whether you are withdrawing yourself from sense objects. It does not matter. In both the cases, you may be in control or you may not be in control. This is what in the Bhajagovindam, Adi Shankara, he gives the message. Yogarato va, bhogarato va, sangarato va, sangavihinaha. He says you may be in yoga or you may be in bhoga, enjoyment. Sangaratova sangavihina. You may be in company or you may be alone. All these things do not matter whether you are spiritual or not. Then what matters? Yasya brahmani ramate chittam nandati nandati nandatyeva. one whose mind, chittam means all the thoughts at the mind level, one who is established in that infinite Brahman, he revels, he is a spiritual person. So then you may ask me, sir, does it mean this is a license for me to go all out and just keep contacting the sense objects? No, please don't misuse this philosophy. Where you have a weakness, you need to externally withdraw till you gain mastery. Where you don't have a weakness, there is no necessity to withdraw because that will not disturb you. So what is the test of whether you have mastery over the senses or not? As I told you, sometimes you may have mastery over one sense and you may not have mastery over some other sense. So how do you find out? Very, very simple. When the sense object is not there, when it is not available to you for enjoyment, you will not crave for it. You will not constantly be thinking about the sense object without your control. Fixing a goal in life and trying to achieve that is a conscious effort. I'm not talking of that. But by itself, if the mind keeps going towards the sense object which is not present there in front of you, then to that extent you've lost control. So the first principle is, when the object is not there in front of you, you don't crave for it. Number two, when you are experiencing the sense object, there is no excitement. You enjoy it. See, enjoyment is different from excitement. That difference itself most people don't understand. General understanding of enjoying life is, you have to get so excited and you will have to lose your balance and keep jumping. It's not that. So while you are enjoying, you are fully there. But the moment you need to stop, you will have the capacity to stop. That is the second aspect of your mastery. So first is, when the object is not there, you don't crave for it. Second is, when you are experiencing the sense object, you have the ability to stop whenever you want to stop. And the third aspect is, after the sense contact is over, you don't linger. So before you contact, there is no craving. While you're contacting, whenever you want to stop, you have the ability to stop. And after the contact, there is absolutely no lingering. If you have gained all these three aspects, then you can say that yes, I have mastered this particular sense object. If even one of these are there, then you don't have mastery in that area. So what should you do in that area? Better not to contact the sense object, because the moment you contact, you will lose yourself completely. So withdraw, put some discipline and do the tapas, do the sadhana every day. Actually, when you do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana every day, slowly what will happen is that your capacity to enjoy the world will increase. But you will enjoy it in a very calm and a full way. You will not crave for anything. You will not miss anything. You will be totally in the present and you will go through all the experiences of life. A yogi never has any hang-ups in life. He completes every experience. So you should first start with the experience of sense objects, because that is the grossest experience you can get in life. So, if any of these three is not there, you have lost mastery, and then this pramathin will take over. See, whenever you see a person having something which you don't have, let us say a person is very wealthy. Now, what is your reaction? Do you genuinely feel happy for the person and do you say, I bless that person? Or do you feel jealous? Do you try to gossip about that person or try to find out some negative thing? You will say, he's having too much of wealth, it must be black money, or he must have used unrighteous means. Something you try to say to put the other person down. What is your reaction? Find out. If your reaction is one of happiness, then you don't have weakness in that area. If your reaction is that of jealousy, envy, then it means you have a weakness. All those who criticize others for being wealthy, remember, they have a weakness for wealth. Because a person who does not have weakness for wealth, he'll be quite happy if another person is wealthy, and if he is getting some temporary happiness out of it, he will say, I'm genuinely happy for you. I bless you from the bottom of my heart. So any form of craving is a weakness. So you need to use this to study yourself. So I'm just warning, because there would be a tendency, the ego will be waiting and it will influence the mind to use the same verses to justify your weaknesses. Like a person who is addicted to alcohol, I remember every day, every now and then he used to keep drinking alcohol, and none of his family members actually liked it. And whenever his wife and children used to tell him, why are you drinking? He used to say, no, I have absolutely no weakness. I don't miss this at all. Any time I want, I can just leave it. So one day the wife asked him, then why don't you leave it? We are all asking you to leave it. At least for our sake, why don't you leave it? That he will never do. So this philosophy can be misused. So be very careful, because the ego is always waiting. See, it's a very thin dividing line between what I am saying and what is indulgence. Either you will slip into suppression, that is complete withdrawal without any sense, or you will slip into the other extreme, which is indulgence, saying it is all in the mind. Nothing, I am fully in the sense enjoyment and I am above it. There is a beautiful story given in our Puranas. You must have heard of the great sage Narada. Narada was supposed to be a sage who had attained a very high level of spiritual growth, whose mind is constantly attuned with divinity. But there is an incident in his life, and from that incident we learn the power of the mind, the power of the senses. So what happened is, one day when Narada was going around, he happened to go to that place where there was a cave, and that was a cave where Lord Shiva had sat and done immense meditation for many years, thousands of years. When Sati died, she burnt herself, Shiva's wife, Sati. Then Shiva went off into meditation. He shut himself completely out and he went into deep meditation for years together. And then the story is that the Sati was reborn as Parvati, and they again regained, they got married. Now, when he was in such deep tapas, they had to wake him up from the tapas. Otherwise, he will never ever look at Parvati. And the union between Shiva and Parvati was a must. It's very symbolic because Shiva represents the male energy, Parvati represents the female energy. And the balance between the male and female energy is always required. So what did they do? They asked the gods, they asked Manmata, that is the god of love, to come and incite the passion inside Shiva. So it is very dramatically put, he uses his arrow, he sends the arrow of passion, the arrow made of flowers, and that went and tried to incite passion in Shiva. And then Shiva opened his eyes. The moment his tapas was disturbed, he opened his eyes and his third eye automatically opened, the third eye, and he looked at the god of love, and immediately Manmata was burnt to ashes. This is the story. And then there are many more incidents. But I am referring to this particular incident because it is related to our verse here. So that was a place where Lord Shiva did immense tapas. So the vibrations of that place was very, very strong. So sage Narada happened to be in that place, and he sat and did some meditation. And when he did meditation in that place, he found that all his senses came under his control. He gained mastery over his own senses. Now what he didn't realize is, it is not because of him, it was because of the place where Lord Shiva had done and sat and done tapas. So the vibrations were so strong, so conducive, that anybody who went to that place, the effect was mastery over the senses, because he had burnt the god of love, who represents the sensual desire. So when he gained mastery over the senses, immediately sage Narada developed a lot of ego. So he went to meet Lord Vishnu, and he was considered as one of the greatest bhaktas of Lord Vishnu, constantly remembering Lord Vishnu, chanting Lord Vishnu's name, Narayana, Narayana. That was his tapas. So when he went to meet Lord Vishnu, he walked in with a lot of pride, a pride that I have conquered my senses, And the moment Lord Vishnu saw Narada, his non-verbal expression, immediately Vishnu understood, oh, now Narada has been afflicted with this disease of ego. So he played a game and he asked him, so Narada, how is everything? How is your tapas going? To which Narada said, my Lord, I want to declare something to you. I have conquered my senses. I have become a master of all my senses. And he spoke in a very haughty tone. When you go to Lord Narayana, you humble yourself. So all the humility had gone away. And similarly after that he went to Lord Brahma, his own father, and again he spoke in a very arrogant way because he thought he had gained complete mastery. Then Brahma requested Lord Narayana and he said, he is your devotee, you are his guru, you are everything to him. You should only rid him of this disease of ego? Lord Narayana said yes. So then the story is that Lord Narayana created an illusory place as Narada was walking, and in that place there was a kingdom, and Narada saw the princess of the kingdom, and immediately he was very much attracted to her. Because the ego made him believe that he was a master. So he said, what is wrong with attraction? I am a complete master of my senses. So when he went and met the king said, I have arranged for a Swayamvar. Swayamvar means where all the king's princes come, and the daughter, she takes a garland and she walks and she chooses her partner, So that was a age-old system of Swayamvar, where the girl only chooses her husband. So many kings had come from different places. They were all invited. So then when Narada heard about this Swayamvar, immediately he wanted to marry the princess. So he went to Lord Narayana and he said, my Lord, give me Hari Mukha, means give me a face like yours, like Hari. Hari was another name of Lord Narayana himself. So Lord Narayana was called Mohana. Mohana means all attractive, one who can cause moha in others. Very, very, very beautifully described, So he said, I want Hari Mukha. The Sanskrit word Hari also means a monkey. So Lord Narayana said, so be it. And Narada's face became like a monkey. And he went to that Swayamvar. And when he went there, everybody laughed. And he thought, why is everyone laughing? When the girl comes and when she chooses, because who can resist Lord Hari? So when the girl comes and when she chooses me, then, all these people will understand. And then the girl came, she saw him one by one, she was seeing all the kings who were all standing up. And when she came to Narada, she saw him and she just controlled her laughter and passed by. Then Narada was very surprised. Why didn't she choose me? So he again disappeared from there and he appeared elsewhere in the line where all of them were standing. So again and again he kept appearing. And the girl didn't choose him. Actually, the girl didn't choose anyone. So then Lord Vishnu himself appeared there, and the moment she saw Lord Vishnu, she went and garlanded him. So she was an Amsha of Lakshmi, And then everybody was so happy. When Narada saw that, he became very, very angry. He became so angry towards Vishnu and Lakshmi. See, imagine, the illusion was so strong, the ego had completely overtaken him. So what he did is, he went to, in the kingdom they used to keep vessels with some water poured. So he went to one of those vessels and he saw his own face and he saw the face of a monkey. Then he became extremely angry with Lord Narayana. And immediately he turned and cursed him, saying that for your, you will be separated from your wife. You and your wife will be separated for an entire lifetime. And you will suffer because of the separation. This was the curse which he gave to Lord Narayana. And the moment he cursed, then he got back his senses and he said, my God, what have I done? And he asked for forgiveness from Lord Narayana. And then Lord Narayana asked Yogamaya to withdraw the entire illusion, the whole palace, everything disappeared. And Lord Narada was feeling very, very guilty. And Narayana said, don't worry, this whole thing was set up so that you learn your lesson. It's not so easy to control your senses, to become a master of your senses. You had developed an ego. So when a person has ego, there is no way any master can come and give advice. Advice will not be taken. So instead of giving any advice, I created this situation for you to learn. But then Narada said, okay, I learnt. It was a costly lesson I learnt. But in that I cursed you. Now you will have to be separated from Goddess Lakshmi. So my request is, don't accept this curse. To which Lord Narayana said, no. When a great sage like you, when you utter something, that should never be a false utterance. So I will definitely accept this curse as a blessing. And in one of my incarnations, that is when he incarnated as Lord Rama, he said, I will fulfill this curse of yours. Sita and Lakshmi will be born as Sita, and we will be separated for our entire lifetime. We will get married, but then we'll stay together for a while, and then we will get separated. And incidentally, I will use that for the benefit of the world, because every avatar comes to resurrect righteousness. So I will go in search of Sita, and in that process I will be killing many demons, Rakshasas and Asuras. So that's the story of Ramayana. Now, what does this episode teach us? Some people ask me, sir, are these stories or have they happened in real? No, see, they are not stories. They are incidents. See, the problem is we use the word mythology for everything. Mythology means myth, Just because many thousands of years have passed, now we are calling it as a myth. But no, these were all actually incidents. A drama which was played for you and me to learn a lesson. So sometimes, when authors write a story, they write a story based on real life incidents. Every little thing which they write may not have happened. Every dialogue may not have happened exactly, in that way. But a story can be based on real life incidents. A movie can be taken based on real life incidents. Haven't we seen many movies? Shakespeare wrote the Julius Caesar. Did Julius Caesar actually exist? Yes. But Shakespeare took that and he wrote the Julius Caesar to give certain messages to people. Similarly, Vyasa wrote the Mahabharata. Did Mahabharata actually happen? Yes. But he took those real life incidents and weaved a philosophy out of it. The same thing with the Puranas. Vyasa was the one who wrote the entire 18 Puranas. So all these Puranic incidents actually have very deep messages. So what is the message from the story? Pramathin Indriyani. Just that is Pramathini Indriyani. The turbulent senses. That is the message of this entire episode of Narada. Because as long as Narada's mind was one with divinity, he was very peaceful. But the moment the ego took over and he thought, I have mastered and all that, actually his sense, he was not peaceful at all. When his senses became turbulent, Pramathin, he lost his peace of mind. And then when he realized his mistake, when he understood that yes, this is the ego play, immediately he got back the peace of mind. That is the message which we learn. So just by doing a little bit of sadhana, now immediately don't take it for granted. That's what we're going to see today in the second half of the verse, where he says, even the wise person who is watchfully striving, yatatah, his mind, can be forcibly carried away by the senses. O Kaunteya, O Arjuna, Kunti Putra, son of Kunti and Indra, you have that power. So first use that power, that Indra within you, to gain a certain amount of mastery over your senses. That is the first step. So before we see the second part of the verse, there have been a couple of questions asked in the YouTube comment section. Several people have asked questions regarding this verse. So I'll just cover that because it is in line with this. First question is, Hari Om Yogishri, I am Maheshwar of 11 years. So 11-year-old, boy. I have a doubt about today's session. If a man is blind, is it his Golaya damaged or his Indriya not sending power to the eye, that is organ? Please clear this doubt for me. A very good question. See, this shows that to be a sadhak, age really does not matter. When we say 11 years or 20 years or 50 years, that is only the physical age. That way Adi Shankaracharya only lived up to the age of 32 physically. Great masters, Vivekananda died passed away very young. Ramatirtha, he was there only for up to the age of 33 or 34. By Jesus Christ himself, I think his age was 33 when he left the body. So age, and there were many sages who lived for long also physically. So age, physical age has nothing to do with your spiritual age. That is something which you all need to realize. Because some people ask me, how early should we learn this? As early as possible. Even pregnant women, when they listen to Yoga Sankirtan Sadhana, right from the womb, the baby, the embryo will be receiving this energy, because it's a spiritual age that matters. So the question which this boy has asked is, when a person is blind, is it the Golaya, the gross fleshy organ, or is it the Indriya, the power behind the senses which is not giving the power? Now this is not only with respect to one sense organ, we can extrapolate and understand it with respect to all the sense organs. Now, when we take this example of blindness, it can be both. Either the Golaya can be damaged, or the Indriya may not be sending power to the Golaya, that is the fleshy organ. In both the cases, the person will not be able to see. Sometimes you find the organs are in perfect condition. Like, the doctors say that as a person ages, sometimes when they are unable to hear, I asked the doctors, is the ear per se in perfect condition? They say yes. Then why is it that they are not able to hear? Because the Indriya has got weakened. The power behind the organ has got weakened. That is what our great yogis say. Sometimes the reverse also is possible. Supposing you damage a particular sense organ, the physical damage happens. The power behind the sense organ may still be there, but the organ will not be available for the power to express itself. So actually this, the understanding of this is the starting point of the science of healing. When you heal yourself, you start from the Golaya, the physical body, and then you start activating the Indriya, the power behind the functioning of the physical body. And the more deep you are able to go and heal yourself, the better you will find the physical body, the condition of the physical body will become. It's very interesting. So you cannot give a standard answer as it is either the Golaya or it is the Indriya. It could be either of the two, or it could be a combination also. So supposing a person is born blind because of the physical organ, let us say, there is a defect in the physical organ, but the Indriya is active. Then what will happen? So the power of the sight is there, but unfortunately the physical organ is not there for it to express. So what that Indriya will do, it will start distributing its power to the other sense organs, the ears, the nose and everything. So when it does that, that is why you will find a person who does not have eyes, his other senses will be very, very sharp. It is said in the Mahabharata that Dhritarashtra was born blind. He didn't have the Golaya, that is the physical eye, was damaged. But his Indriya was very powerful. So that got distributed, that power got distributed to all the other senses to such an extent where as a person used to walk near him, he used to immediately know who it was just by hearing the footsteps, by smelling the other person from a distance itself. So all his other sense faculties became so much awake that he didn't have the necessity for the eyes at all. Even when Dhritarashtra was well versed in the art of fighting also. So even when somebody used to wield a weapon at him, he used to wait till the last minute and then catch hold of that weapon, even though he was unable to see it physically. It is mentioned in the Mahabharata. How? Because of the Indriya, the power which got distributed to the other senses. So in the Kaya Tattva program which we had earlier, we had focused more on the physical aspect, the application of the higher healing Shakti in the physical aspect, which we'll be deepening this year. That is the 21-22 day course which we are going to have. And then slowly we will harness that Shakti, the healing energy, and start moving towards the subtler aspects of your personality. So that is a good question. Another question which another sadhak has asked, this has been asked by Amrita. See, this is very handy for me. It's easy for me when you put it in the comment section of the YouTube. I'm only taking it from there, or if it's a personal question or something, you can always send a mail to the contact at Infinite Wing. Those two alone I'm reading and I'll be answering. If you keep putting it in different places, like some people I heard they put it in the live chat, some people put it in some WhatsApp group. Now, I can't keep going through everything. This makes it very easy for me, either here or through mail also you can send the questions to me. So Hari Om, the idea that sense organs have their roots in the mental sheaths deep within us was very enlightening. Does this mean that we can control our senses not through denial, but by focusing on the connections between our gross senses and our sense centers? Does this mean that studying the meanings or the emotional value that we attach to sense experiences will help us understand our urges, our innermost needs? It's a very, very good question. So the answer to the first question is yes. Merely by denying your senses, you will not gain sense mastery. It is the tapas which you need to do. You have to move from the Golaya, the gross level, to the Indriya, the subtle level. That is the first step. So the more you succeed in withdrawing yourself inside you towards the Indriya, the more mastery you will get over the Golaya, that is the external sense organ. That sense organ, you may employ it, you may contact the sense object or you may not contact, depending upon the situation. But either way, you will be under perfect mastery. And then, of course, the second question which you had asked about the emotions, the emotions which are attached to sensory perceptions. Yes, that is going further deep. Here he is talking of up to the sense centers of the mind. But then when you go further deep, you have emotions, you have superficial emotions first, then you have deeper emotions, deepest emotions, then you have the thoughts which generate the emotions, the incidents which have from your past which have triggered those emotions, your karmas. Like this, there are so many deeper aspects within you. But the suggestion given by the great yogis is to first start from the gross and move up to the indriya level. Then only you will be in a position to probe further. When you do the Yoga Sankirtan sadhana, all these things actually happen to you without your knowledge. That is, you start going deep within many a times. Why is it that sometimes you feel like crying, or many incidents come to your memory when you're doing the sadhana? Because that goes deep within you and starts triggering. So one thing is, do your sadhana on a regular basis. Your entire personality from the deepest core will be cleaned up. Side by side, when you keep gaining this wisdom, it will give you more insights, and it will help you to deepen your sadhana. When you understand what you're doing and when you do, it will give you more benefits. That's the whole idea. Okay? So, the turbulent senses of even the wise person who is watchfully striving indeed. So, vipaschitaha. Last week I mentioned that also. Vipash means intensely seeing. Chitaha means the mind. So, who is called a wise person? One who intensely sees his own mind. That's what I was telling you. You be the book and you be the reader. So what is the difference between modern psychology and ancient yogic psychology? The difference is in the direction only. In modern psychology, they are studying others' minds. But in ancient yogic psychology, you study your own mind, which is the most difficult thing to do. So one who sees the mind intensely, one who looks inward, such a person is a sage, a seer. Not one who has mere bookish knowledge. That is of no use. So, vipaschitaha, who is watchfully striving, yatataha, indeed. We'll get the messages from that word today, and then how finally he concludes. It's very, very interesting, because each of these words are so significant in this particular verse, and you will have to penetrate in a yogic way and get your sadhana messages from all these and start practicing them, and then putting all of them together, and we will be getting into the final message of the verse also. So, how did he become vipaschita? What is the effort? What does he do? He says one who is striving. So, when we talk of vipaschita, one who is intensely watching one's mind, that is one who is a sage, when you get established in that perception, you become pure consciousness. See, if you ask me what is that infinite being, one of the aspects of infinite being is consciousness, unconditioned, pure consciousness, pure awareness. So when a sadhak goes on practicing this awareness, first awareness about what is happening outside, and then what is happening in the body, then what is happening in the mind, that is much more subtle, advanced level of awareness. So when he goes on watching his own mind, slowly, the mind gets completely purified and all the thoughts actually cease. That is a state of meditation, a state of thoughtlessness. And when there are no thoughts from their roots, not a temporary state of thoughtlessness, but completely from the roots, from the seeds, when all the thoughts of the mind go away, then he becomes completely one with the infinite. And what is that infinite? It is unconditioned consciousness, unconditioned awareness. So vipaschitaha, when you take it to the extreme point, that is nothing but the state of sthita prajna. Prajna, sthita prajna is what we are doing. Prajna means awareness. So sthita prajna, that is consciousness, one who is established in that awareness. But here he is not talking about vipaschitaha in that extreme state. He is talking about a person who is still striving, yatataha, who is in the path of becoming a vipaschitaha. So nobody can be 100% perfect right at the start, No master will say, from this moment onwards now, you should become 100% calm. It's not possible. Everybody starts at some level. Supposing, let us say, you are at 10% level, then you are 10% vipaschitaha. Then as you do your sadhana, you will become 20% vipaschitaha, then 30%, 40%, as your awareness, objectivity goes on increasing. And then when you become 100%, that is the state of sthita prajna. You become one with the infinite completely. So here he is talking of below the 100% level, when a person is striving, what is his state? That is what he is referring to. He has to be very careful, he says, because the senses, till you get completely established in the infinite, there is always a chance of the senses carrying away the mind. One has to be very careful. So he is using the word yatataha for striving. I have translated this in a yogic way as watchfully striving, because the word yatataha is very difficult to put it in one word in the English language. See, you all say that yes, I am putting in efforts, but are you putting in the right kind of efforts? Here we will examine what is true effort. So if you can absorb these principles and go and apply it in your life, you will be successful in anything which you do. The same principles which are applicable at the spiritual level are applicable at the external material level also. So what is true effort? True effort is called yatataha. There are 5 dimensions. The root word for yatataha is yat. The Sanskrit root, the dhatu is yes, yat. Now there are 5 dimensions to this word yat. What are the 5 dimensions? One by one we'll see. The first aspect of true effort is striving, exertion. Now, what is this dimension of effort? In anything which you want to achieve in life, the first step is hard work, the capacity to exert yourself till you reach your goal. That is the first dimension of yatataha. The general tendency of the mind is, the mind wants so many things in life, but it does not want to put the effort. When it comes to the effort, very few people put. See, you go and ask anyone, do you want to become a multi-billionaire? They will all say yes, why not? But then, do this. There, when it comes to efforts, they don't put. that exertion, striving, that capacity is the first aspect of yatataha. When it comes to, in the 18th chapter, he gives who is a sattvic actor, who is a rajasic actor, who is a tamasic actor. One of the aspects of a sattvic actor is one who goes on striving till the end, means one who is prepared to put in hard work till the end. So that is the first aspect of yatataha. What is our sadhana message from this dimension? Don't look for shortcuts. Anything you want in life, now first ask yourself, am I willing to pay the price? Am I willing to put my efforts? Am I willing to exert myself in that area? If you want wealth, yes, let me put in efforts, let me exert myself and earn wealth. You should not think in terms of let me know how to take the wealth from others, or how to, some people complain, my parents haven't given me anything. Why? Parents have given you this human body, and with this human body you can achieve anything you want in the world, and you can also achieve spiritual success. What more do you require from your parents? So the capacity to exert yourself, to strive, that is the first aspect. The second aspect of yatataha, the second dimension, is attempting, trying. See, one is you put in your efforts, you have the capacity, you say, yes, I will now exert myself, but are you giving your best in that field? That is what is the meaning of attempting or trying. So your efforts can be casual, that is your exertion, your work. You may say, I am working hard, but still that exertion itself may be casual, or it may be half-hearted. No. He says, you have to attempt, you have to give, you have to try, you have to give in your best efforts. That is why I keep asking people, whenever they come to me for advice, first thing I ask, usually when people come to me, they keep telling me all their problems, this is wrong, this is wrong. Then I ask them, what is it that you want? Do you want to gossip with me about your problem? Or what is it? Or do you want a solution? That itself is a big step, to seek a solution. People are caught up so much with the problems that they don't want a solution actually. And then they say, yes, I want a solution. Then I ask them, okay, you want this in life. What is the price which you are willing to pay? Are you first of all willing to put in efforts? Number one. Don't think this is a miracle where you just tell me this is a problem and immediately some healing is given and your whole life is transformed. It is not that. The healing, no doubt, the healing energy is given, but you will have to do your sadhana, the efforts you will have to put in. And then I ask them, will you put these efforts half-heartedly, or will you try your best? I find most of the people falter there. A person wants a job. Does he really put his full effort in searching for jobs? No. He just puts in a half-hearted attempt, Here and there, 2-3 applications he puts. And then he keeps cribbing and says, I don't have a job. Person wants a partner in life. Is he putting, are his attempts honest, full? Is he trying his best? That is the second aspect of yatataha. And then the third aspect of yatataha also means eagerness, enthusiasm. So you may decide, you may say, yes, I will put in efforts, number one. Number two, you may say, yes, I will give it my best shot. See, this is very important. Anything you do in life, you should give it your best. In yogic parlance, half-hearted attempt is considered as no attempt only. So you should give it your best shot. These two aspects you have mastered, but then the third aspect is missing. You're putting in all the effort without any enthusiasm, in a very morose way, in a very serious way. Then that is not true efforts. In the yogic parlance, yatataha, putting in efforts means you try your best very, very cheerfully with a lot of enthusiasm. So the success is not merely in achieving the goal. The very process itself, in the very process itself, you can be successful right from step one. With full enthusiasm, if you enjoy the process, then the very efforts actually, your very effort becomes your goal. And when you achieve the final destination, that also you enjoy in the present, and then you move on. So is your work a drudgery today, or are you very enthusiastic about your work? You are working in your office. They are paying you salary. That's why you are working there. You should first feel very grateful. Whatever job, whatever work you're doing, how enthusiastic are you about doing it? That determines how successful you will be. You find any successful person, they will have tremendous enthusiasm in whatever it is they are doing. So this is the third dimension of yatataha. The fourth dimension of yatataha also means being very watchful, cautious. So the moment we talk of enthusiasm, some people become over enthusiastic and they start putting in efforts beyond their capacity. A yogi is one who is well balanced. He puts in the right kind of effort. So your effort should be in proportion to your capacity also. Just as like doing physical exercises. If you want to build your muscles, let's say you want to do push-ups. First day itself, if you try and do 100 push-ups, now what will happen? That is being over enthusiastic. So the enthusiasm is not over excitement where you lose your very sense of proportion and balance. No, that is why the fourth dimension is very, very important. Watchfulness, being cautious. Cautious that you don't overexert or underexert. And you're also cautious about the various blocks which may come, the various temptations which may come and pull you away from your chosen path. That is the fourth dimension of yatataha. And then comes the fifth dimension, which is perseverance, tenacity, the consistency. When you put in efforts, yes, you're very enthusiastic about it, but for one day you do it in a very enthusiastic way, you're also very cautious and all that, but you just do it for 1 day or 2 days. After that you leave it. Then there is no consistency. Why are we having these sessions, on a consistent basis every Sunday? Because only consistent efforts can give you success. Why am I having Yoga Sankirtan Empowerment and other advanced courses every year? And I keep telling you, it's not enough if you attend one empowerment course. Year after year, when you keep attending the empowerment courses, that is when your spiritual powers will grow. It's consistency which matters. Any successful person will put in consistent efforts. Tenacity. Tenacity means the, refusing to give up your efforts. Refusing to say that I have lost. But you go on putting in efforts till you succeed. That is called perseverance. So these are the 5 aspects of yatataha which you need to master. Such a person only is called a true sadhak. He is just simply saying vipaschitaha hu yatataha. He uses two words. Don't just read them listlessly. You need to delve deep and absorb the energy behind what he's trying to give you. So he is defining a sadhak here, one who puts in yatataha, this kind of effort in the inward journey. Vipaschitaha means one who watches his own mind. Such a person is only called a sadhak. So you can apply these same principles in any field. Supposing you want to become successful in your career, apply these same principles of yatataha. So next time when you come and tell me, yes sir, are you doing your sadhana, are you putting in effort? You say yes. Are you putting in all these 5 aspects? So what are the 5 aspects? Again I am giving you. First thing is, anything you want in life, don't look for shortcuts. That willingness to put in effort, the willingness to do hard work. You get only what you deserve in life. Never try to get something without absolutely any effort. That is gambling. Don't gamble with your life. If you want something, put in that effort. Willingness to strive, number 1. Number 2, it is not enough if you have mere willingness to strive. That striving should be 100%. You should be very honest to yourself. Your personality should be integrated. There should be an integrity in your efforts, not half-hearted attempts. Either you don't do something or you do something. This is the yogic sadhana. Some people, they tell me, when they come for advice, I tell them, do yoga sankirtan every day, watch Sunday, tune in every Sunday and absorb this energy. They say, yes Yogishri, I will try. The way they say I will try itself, I know that they will not do it. When you say I will, when he says attempting, what he means is giving your best, full-hearted efforts. And then the third thing is enthusiasm. Whatever you do in life, do it with full enthusiasm. Try it today itself. Supposing you're cooking, cook with full enthusiasm and see. Give it your best shot. After this, if you're going and doing some office work or you're writing, whatever it is you want to do it with full enthusiasm. See, when you actually do it with full enthusiasm, you will find that work itself will become a source of pleasure for you. You don't require any special entertainment. Your very work will start entertaining you so much. The enthusiasm will go on building. So when you get up early in the morning, are you feeling, oh, one more day? Are you having that drudgery feeling, or are you waking up in a very enthusiastic way, saying one more opportunity, one more day has been given to me. Now let me go all out and experience life. Let me grow materially, let me also grow spiritually. Let me not waste my time. So develop that attitude. And then the fourth is, remember, be watchful and cautious. Don't get over excited about anything. And beware of the temptations which can come and they may try to dislodge you from the path which you've chosen. So you have to be very watchful and cautious and resist those temptations. Whatever path you have set for yourself, the goal you have set, the path also you have set, you need to apply yourself diligently. That is watchfulness. And then the final aspect of effort is perseverance, tenacity, consistency. So you should not leave your efforts till you reach your goal. That is why Swami Vivekananda, he said, arise, awake and stop not till you reach the goal. The Sanskrit word there's a special Sanskrit word for that called Shraddha. Again, that word, one definition is not enough. One of the aspects of Shraddha is to take up something and go to the very end of it. Not leaving the effort till you go to the end of it. So, these 5 aspects, 5 dimensions put together is the meaning of Yatataha. So here is such a great sadhak he is referring to, a Vipaschitaha, one who has started that inward journey and who is Yatataha, who is putting in all his efforts. These 5 dimensions he is applying and he is putting in effort. Even for such a person, he says he has to be careful because the senses forcibly carry away the mind, he says. Imagine a person who is putting so much of effort, to him also he says, you have to be cautious. Just because you have now come to the spiritual path and you are practicing, you are putting in your sincere efforts, now don't slacken your awareness. Be very, very careful because the senses have tremendous power. The ego, when the ego is waiting for one small loophole, the moment it finds that, it will immediately try to enter through that. Just as, today in it's all the internet world, and they say there are professional hackers. Every day they keep trying to hack websites and all that. What is interesting is how much ever security you try and put. Supposing you have a website and you put all the security, the hackers try to find one small loophole in the coding or in the security. And the moment they find one loophole, they immediately hack the site. That's how even very big websites have been hacked. It's very interesting. And that is why what they say is they go on giving upgrades. When you're using any plugins and all that, they go on giving upgrades because it's a continuous process. They locate the loopholes and immediately they solve it. They give you the next update. You'll have to update it. And then again they locate some loopholes, they give you updates. So it's a continuous process of improvement. In spirituality also it's the same thing. Spirituality is nothing but a continuous process of self-improvement. At every step you need to be very careful. So it's like a cone. When you're at a low level, there are certain kinds of temptations. As you keep moving up, the temptations will differ in terms of quality. Different kinds of temptations will come and tempt you. But temptations will be there. They will try to pull you away from your path. But a person who remains steady, who does not come away from the principle of Yatataha, those 5 dimensions, he goes on evolving till he reaches the final point, which is becoming a Sthita Prajna. So the turbulent senses, pramatini indriyani, of even the wise person, Vipaschitaha, who is watchfully striving indeed, Yatataha, O Kaunteya, forcibly carry away the mind. Prasabham manah. Prasabham means forcibly it will carry. So once you lose your control, see the whole system is, you have the golaya, the physical organ. Then it becomes subtler. You have the Pranavayu Sharira, then you have the pranic body, then you have the sense center. As long as you're operating from the sense center, the whole thing will be under your control. The moment you lose your control, that is the sense center, then he says it's very, very dangerous, because the sense organs can completely take away the rest of your mind also. How many people, they have very, very good talent, but they have very, very good talents, but all those talents actually go waste because of weakness for one sense object. This was highlighted in the Mahabharata. Yudhishthira, he had a weakness for dice game. Then you may ask me, why is Yudhishthira considered as a positive? See, positive, negative are only relative. Pandavas never wanted to destroy others. That is why they are considered as good people, basically. Having a weakness doesn't make a person a bad person. Why Duryodhana is called a negative person? Because he wanted others' wealth. He wanted to destroy others. So Yudhishthira had a weakness for the dice game, and Shakuni exploited that weakness. The evening before this dice game, Shakuni invites Yudhishthira informally, and they play a game of dice. And in that game, Shakuni loses deliberately, just to put that ego in Yudhishthira's mind. So Yudhishthira feels, oh, I have defeated the uncle Shakuni himself, so I am a great dice player. The next day when the dice game started, Yudhishthira was overconfident and he lost himself, One small weakness, that was enough. Entire mind got carried away. And he said, I will stake my brothers while playing, I'll stake all my wealth, I'll stake my own wife. All utter foolishness. Everything because of that one weakness, and the ego took over. It completely engulfed him and pulled away all his sense of dharma, because he was a dharma raja, he was an epitome of dharma, righteousness. In spite of that, he lost all his capacity to be dharmic in that split second. Why? Because it carried away his mind. That is the power of your senses. So the senses can carry away your mind, but if you do sadhana, then your mind can keep the senses under its control. And when you have that self-control, when you have that discipline, you can achieve anything you want in life. Whether you want material success or whether you want spiritual success, this is the way. Okay, so we'll see more in the coming weeks. And last week I had announced about the 21-day program. Actually, it will be for 22 days. 21 days will be intense sadhana, and then I'll give a small break, and then we will have question answer session. That will be the 22nd session, and in that question answer session, the final healing also will be given. So to be exact, it will be a 22-day program. Mostly we'll be having in the month of December. Every day it will be for 2 hours or so. And this time, you don't worry, it will start at 6 a.m. Indian time, 6 to 8, but it will be kept for 24 hours because these are all working days, and so you don't need to panic in case you miss the session. If you one day, you can always come back to it. So all those details will be given soon. They are making them ready. The exact dates, the time, everything will be given. It actually consists of 4 parts. So part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, with some breaks in between also. And then the 5th part is the question and answer. Because after attending these 4 parts, then only then I'll be giving you an opportunity for you to ask your question, and we'll have a separate session for that. So that will be a very, very powerful course. It will cause complete healing. The basis will be health only, but I'll be increasing the energy further. So those of you who have already attended Kaya Tattva, you will get more established in the principle of Kaya Tattva. Even if you're not practiced enough, it does not matter. This course will help you to get established and become very, very attuned to the higher energy. So through this course, I will also be preparing you for next year, where we are going to move up to the Prana Vayu Sharira. Little bit of that also I'll be touching upon it. Some mudras also I'll be teaching, which are all very much required before we go further up, so that we'll see. I'm telling you now itself, even before the full information has been put up, so that you can plan yourself. It will be in the month of December only, so you plan accordingly. We are giving enough time. Okay, so now we'll have meditation. Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. Feel the vibrations as the chanting is being done. Experience the holy vibrations, which will make you very, very meditative, and your focus will automatically turn inward. I am not this body. This body is the vehicle which I am using to travel in my life. This body is the equipment which I have that is the 10 sense organs are the parts of this vehicle. They are very, very powerful, but I have the power to control them, to gain mastery over them. From this moment onwards, I choose to be a Vipaschitah, one who explores the inner world, one who puts in the effort to gain complete mastery over the mind. I awaken the Vipaschitah aspect within me. And in order to achieve all my worldly goals and my ultimate spiritual goal of enlightenment, I awaken the power of Yatataha, Yat, the power of effort within me. From this moment onwards, I will not look for any shortcuts in life. I will not look for anything free, but I choose to pay the price, to put in the hard work, to achieve whatever I want in my life. I choose to give my 100% effort, to give my best in each and everything which I do. If I'm in office, I choose to be there 100%. If I'm at home, mingling with my family members, I give my 100% to them. Everything which I do, I don't make half-hearted attempts, but I give it my best shot. I choose to do each and every action in a very enthusiastic way. The joy which I feel comes from my efforts, not merely from the achievement of my goals. So throughout the process, there is so much of enthusiasm within me. I choose to awaken the aspect of caution within me, to ensure that I neither overexert myself and get burnt out, nor do I underexert myself. I choose to awaken the tenacity within me, the capacity to consistently put in my efforts till I reach my goal. Iyatataha. I absorb the 5 dimensions, the energy behind the 5 dimensions of Iyatataha within me. I have infinite powers within me. I am one with that infinite power. I am Swayam Prakashit, self-illuminating. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. Offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Slowly come back. Let your consciousness come back slowly. Wriggle your fingers and toes. Open and close your palms a few times. Rub your palms together to create a warmth. Cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, your cheeks, forehead, top of the head, the back of the head and neck. And very, very slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. So today I gave you some very subtle principles. See, these are all like diamonds for you. And generally, when we get something just like that, we don't value it. So my request to all of you is, put in your best honest efforts to absorb these principles in your life. That word yatataha, that is a hallmark of a sadhak, of any yogi. Why do we say a yogi has the capacity to achieve anything which he or she wants? So many aspects he will have, and the primary aspect is yatataha, capacity to put in effort. Each and every one of you have that. That is why in today's meditation, I had taken you deep and I have installed these qualities in your deeper mind. Now it is up to you. Start the practice of these principles right from this moment onwards. In every instance, you can practice these things, And one more thing is, when I was reading the comment section in YouTube, it was really very wonderful because many of you, you're putting down the points. Some of you have summarized all the points. Excellent summary. Actually, some of that summary was so nice because, say, I am a very spontaneous person. I just live moment by moment. So what I say here, the next minute I forget, I go to the next experience. So when I was reading some of the points, that was so inspiring how you have captured. And few others, you had put down 1 or 2 points which had inspired you, but I could feel that energy. And some of you, even when you don't put points, when you just say, thank you Yogishri, or it was so wonderful, I could feel that bhavana behind it. So it is really wonderful that you're putting that effort to absorb and to express, because it's very much required, this interaction. So I bless each and every person who is putting that effort. See, when you don't put the efforts also, the blessings are there. Because when I say blessings, it's all coming from the higher only. That is always there. But you will attract the blessings into your life only if you put in the effort. That's why yatataha is very, very important in sadhana. Whether you want to achieve spiritual success or whether you want to achieve material success, yatataha is a foundation. Okay? So we will see more things next week. Thank you very much.